My friends, the balance of power in the Middle East ceased to exist last night. What happened in the dark waters of the Persian Gulf was not just another staged incident or border test. It was a brutal signal that the international strategic deterrence system has collapsed. We are reaching the 89th day of a suffocating standoff between the Western forces represented by Israel and the United States against the Iranian regime. And last Wednesday, the Revolutionary Guard crossed the final red line of containment and fired a heavy ballistic missile directly at Kuwaiti territory. Look at how serious this is. We're not talking about a militia speedboat or a light propeller drone. It was a large ballistic missile aimed at a country that had been performing complex diplomatic maneuvers to remain neutral in the middle of this crossfire. The Iranians targeted with mechanical precision the strategic airbase that houses thousands of military personnel, technicians, and specialists from the United States Air Force. Pay attention to this, because the attack happened at the exact moment when Tehran's official diplomats were sitting at the peace negotiation table in Doha, wearing polished suits and pretending to seek a ceasefire agreement under international mediation. It's frighteningly brazen. While one team was selling the illusion of peace in Doha, the other faction was preparing the vectors of destruction in Bandar Abbas. Now keep a fundamental question in your mind as you analyze the technical facts I'm going to show you now. At the end of this video, you will have to decide whether what Iran did was a masterstroke or the last gasp of a collapsing regime. But don't decide now. The evidence in Bandar Abbas will change your perception. The retaliation for this absurd military provocation came with overwhelming force. Kuwait's aerospace defense network, operating in perfect sync with American personnel through the Patriot PAC-3 batteries, locked onto the threat on radar and executed a clean intercept, pulverizing the ballistic missile in the sky before it could touch the ground and create a deadly crater in the heart of the military complex. But hold on. You need to understand the scale of the United States response. But first, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and leave a like on the video. This same base already bears deep scars from the war. It was the main target of the bombings on the opening night of Operation Epic Fury on February 28 and suffered a violent attack on April 6 that left 26 Americans injured. But last night, the saturation plan was much bigger. They simultaneously launched 5 one-way attack drones, the Shahed 136 and 238 models, to strangle and paralyze maritime traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. Western fighter jets soared through the atmosphere and cleared the airspace, shooting down all 5 unmanned weapons over the waters. But the real strategic checkmate, that behind-the-scenes revelation that the system tries in every way to hide from you, it happened even before the 6th drone could leave the launch ramp at the coastal base of Bandar Abbas. American air power activated the Advanced Electronic Suppression Doctrine and obliterated the ground control post, showing that the outcome for the aggressor at this stage of history is the end, the absolute end of the line. This is serious, very serious, my friends, and no one is talking about it with the necessary seriousness on television. To understand the engineering of invisible destruction that operated behind the scenes in Bandar Abbas, we need to pull back the curtain of cheap propaganda and analyze the most sophisticated war technology on the planet. F-16CJ fighter jets, known as Wild Weasels, executed an immediate devastating response under the 17th Syed Doctrine.
6CJ. Conhecidos no ambiente militar como Wild Weasels, as doninhas selvagens especializadas na doutrina Syed
of enemy air defense. These aircraft operate at the top of the Western technological chain, configured with AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missiles and equipped with the AN/ASQ-213 HTS sensor pod. Look at the level of Iran's operational collapse. The millisecond the drone operator inside the Bandar Abbas bunker turned on his electronic panels and activated the high-frequency data link. To try to communicate with the 6th artifact on the ramp, he sent his own funeral pyre skyward. The 6 drones stood out on the American electronic panels like a curse word shouted inside a silent church. The sensor pod of the American fighter detected and geolocated the electromagnetic emission in a completely passive way, turning Iran's very attempt at communication into the exact coordinates for its physical execution. Well done. Well, my Shabo, the pilot unleashed hell by firing the HARM missile, which went down toward the target at Mach 2. And this is where you need to understand. This means that from the moment the operator activated it, from pressing the button until the bunker turns to dust, he doesn't even have time to take a deep breath. It's summary execution at the speed of light, with no chance for defense and no time to react. And to complete Tehran's nightmare scenario, these fighters flew protected by the Angry Kitten cognitive electronic warfare system. This mechanism uses artificial intelligence algorithms that analyze the enemy's air defense signal spectrum. And they program themselves in real time, emitting frequencies that paralyze and blind any attempt by Iranian radars to react. The system programs itself in milliseconds. The Iranian operator thinks he has a weapon in his hand, but he only has a target painted on his own back. The American system is not just winning the fight, it's humiliating the aggressor's intellect. But do you know what happens to the Iranian operator when the signal suddenly drops on the screen? Well, the sudden silence in the headphones is the sound of death coming from the sky. The command post in Bandar Abbas was pulverized at Mach 2, triggering violent secondary explosions that hit the storage warehouses. And is the geography of that region strategic? Because it houses the naval backbone of the Revolutionary Guard, full of speedboats, ships, mine layers, and patrol submarines. There is confidential information that the regime has built fortified bases dug directly beneath the seabed, bunkers, hidden submarines, where they try to hide these asymmetric weapons from satellite surveillance. But the coordinated action of 5th-generation F-35 fighters, F-18 Super Hornets, and Reimer's precision rockets proves that Iran's physical defenses was completely destroyed, disarmed by the speed of light and data warfare. This military humiliation in the waters of the Gulf exposes a deep historical pattern that we need to interpret through a perfect metaphor: the dynamic of the bow and the glass pane. The regime of the Ayatollahs desperately tries to stretch its military bow beyond its borders, firing ballistic missiles and funding militias to project a mirage of untouchable regional strength. Do you understand so far? However, while they tighten that external string to try to blackmail the West at the negotiating table, their own internal window pane is shattering into thousands of pieces due to the structural economic collapse that is destroying the country from within. The official data and financial intelligence cross-referenced by the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessant expose the inner workings of Iran's bankruptcy, the regular army troops. They simply haven't been receiving their salaries for months. The local police force is abandoning the stations and refusing to work because the national currency has entered an uncontrollable freefall, turning to dust in the world markets. The financial heart that sustains the Revolutionary Guard, the mega oil terminal at the port of Karg, responsible for almost all the oil exports that finance the regime's missiles, is shutting down operations due to obsolescence and lack of critical maintenance. Pay attention to this contrast. While General Mousavi draws the bow to fire $2 million chunks of metal at Kuwait, the shards of the inner glass, the hunger, the lack of pay, the worthless currency are cutting the hands of those holding the weapon. A regime that can't pay its own police doesn't have the capacity to sustain a long-term war of attrition. The bow is taut, my friends, but the one holding the bow has weak bones and an empty stomach. Launching the missile against Kuwait in the middle of a round of peace talks isn't a demonstration of sovereign power. That's what you have to understand. It's a spasm of desperation of a wounded monster who feels the ground disappearing beneath his feet and tries to create a military media spectacle to hide the total collapse of its state structure. They go into absolute desperation mode. The amateur miscalculation handed Washington a perfectly unified international coalition in the Gulf on a silver platter. Nations that spend years locked in bureaucratic disputes like Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and the entire Gulf Cooperation Council bloc. They acted with unprecedented speed, issuing harsh condemnations and isolating Tehran for good. The regional bloc now sees the mistake. Like a wounded eight-headed hydra that, on the verge of being eliminated, lashes out in a disorganized way at civilian targets, demanding that the system be taken out of action to ensure the survival of global trade routes. And to understand the speed of this downfall, you need to know the profile of the man who made the decision to order the launch last night, because his mind reveals the level of trauma and lack of control that has taken command of the weapons. We're talking about Brigadier General Saeed Majid Musavi, the head of the Revolutionary Guard's Aerospace Force. Look at the historical weight of this timeline. Musavi took on this cursed position on June 14, 2025, exactly 11 days after witnessing his direct predecessor being summarily vaporized in midair by a precision strike carried out by Israel. This man manages the entire ballistic missile network and underground silos, but Musavi has the memory of his boss's physical elimination engraved in his daily routine. Musavi is a military officer. He concluded that no treaty or agreement signed by civilian diplomats in Doha is worth the paper it's written on. He fully understands that his only guarantee of survival is the institutional law instruction, which depends on keeping the Strait of Hormuz under control. The greatest military leaders have much more influence on the nation's directives than any war.
São do que qualquer autoridade.
Meanwhile, the son of the supreme leader, Mostaba Khamenei, remains hidden in some deep bunker, acting as a figurehead. Without practical authority, traumatized generals like Musavi have taken control of the forces. But the classic cognitive problem of handing control of the arsenal to a cornered general follows the ancient maxim. If you only have a hammer in your toolbox, you are conditioned to treat absolutely every complex geopolitical problem around you as if it were a nail. He ignores the bankruptcy of his people, ignores the police strike, and orders the launch of missiles, solely to try to prove that he still has relevance. Acting purely out of biological survival instinct, even knowing that the Western command is cutting off his control networks every second. But if you think the danger ends at Iran's borders, the signal the Pentagon detected in the Tomahawk stockpiles is what should really keep us up at night here in the West. What I'm about to reveal to you now connects the Kuwaiti desert directly to the waters of Taiwan. There is a second level of depth to this story that the mainstream media is not able to see, but I know that you who follow me can. And I'm going to tell you. A behind-the-scenes secret that shows that the gap in the West's cruise missile stockpiles is exactly the sign China was waiting for to take action. The invisible threads of this board connect last night's attack directly to two other high-intensity theaters of war that are redrawing the map of the superpowers. The military inventory reports have revealed the United States has already burned through about 30% of its pre-war stockpile of Tomahawk land attack missiles in interception and bombing operations against the Houthis and the Iranian Axis, worryingly depleting the accumulated reserves. Just so you know, the Tomahawk is one of the main weapons currently used by the United States. Notice the huge industrial bottleneck that TV never mentions. The defense giant Raytheon has a production capacity limited to only 200 Tomahawk missiles per year. This means, in clear mathematical terms, that the volume consumed in just a few months of attrition in the Middle East will require more than 5 years of non-stop accelerated work, from Western factories to fully replenished strategic stockpiles. If China decides to take advantage of this window of logistical vulnerability to carry out a show of force in the Taiwan Strait, in the coming months, the United States' ability to supply heavy missiles to Taipei or to carry out saturation attacks against Chinese coastal defenses will be severely compromised. Promised? Has the stockpile dwindled in the desert? And the impact of this is felt directly in Asian waters. Meanwhile, on the second global front in Eastern Europe, Ukraine has just consolidated its best month in its entire history of land warfare. In the 4-week period ending on May 26, Ukrainian forces inflicted a significant material defeat on Moscow's army, reclaiming a net area of 100 square miles of occupied territory. This is Russia's largest monthly territorial loss this year, advancing at a pace 4 times greater than the rate recorded in the previous period, forcing the Ukrainians to take the initiative by launching more daily assaults than the Russian invaders themselves. Vladimir Putin's desperation in the face of this tactical suffocation on the ground was to immediately use psychological terror as a spectacle, initiating the physical movement of tactical nuclear warheads to the territory of Belarus. Trying to use his strategic systems to create a smokescreen in the media and divert international attention from the conventional slaughter his infantry lines are suffering at the front? Through ambushes carried out with Javelin missiles, Carl Gustaf recoilless rifles and the portable air defense systems manpads which clear air support from the sky. My friends, we saw the structural collapse in Bandar Abbas, we saw the severe trauma moving the pens of Mossad, and now look closely, look at the geopolitical board we've drawn here. On one hand, Tehran's coordinated move to launch missiles during the rounds in Doha appears to be an aggressive pressure strategy to extract international concessions at the diplomatic table. On the other hand, the real economic data, the hunger strike of the troops, and the shutdown of Karg Island scream deep and terminal despair. It's time for you to give your technical verdict, but now I want to separate those who just watch videos for entertainment or are looking for a casual distraction on the internet from those who truly understand the depth of the international geopolitical chessboard. I want your tactical position here in the comments of this video. If you believe that the violent attack by the Revolutionary Guard against Kuwait was part of a calculated maneuver by the Revolutionary Guard to test the limits of American containment and force heavy concessions at the Doha negotiation table, proving that the military command is still in charge and sets the rules of the game, write the word strategy in the comments. Now, if you think that firing ballistic missiles while the country itself is collapsing economically, the troops are left without pay and Karg Island halts its activities, is just the final spasm of a fractured regime. In absolute desperation, write the word desperation. I'm going to personally read each of these comments to find out who here is an elite analyst and who is still stuck in shallow armchair analysis. Well, lay out your technical assessment because the time for doubt is over. The stage is set, my friends, and the forces are already moving behind the scenes. But the truth is that what you see on the surface is just the tip of the iceberg. For those who want to understand the real game before the system collapses for good, the way forward isn't on public networks. That's why we built our intelligence bunker, an exclusive platform, a fully protected environment where censorship simply can't stop us. Inside, more than 3,000 elite analysts dissect every geopolitical and economic move in real time, delivering raw information that no one else has the courage to show and funding the truth that we bring here on YouTube. Access is on your screen now through the QR code, the link in the description, and the first pinned comment. Come join us on the platform and secure your spot before the doors close. And for those of you who like movies and series, we created a channel with tips and a selection of cool, very fun shows. It's pure entertainment, no woke culture, no whining. The link is in the pinned comment in the description and also in the card that appears here. Right now, we're giving tips on series that talk specifically about the conflicts in the Middle East. And a really cool series just premiered, also pretty tough without the annoying stuff or woke content, and we're recommending it there, okay? So, come to our channel. Now comes the most important part. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, leave a like on the video, and you should also share it with your friends. Shield your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.